Maria Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stepped out of the downtown bus. The summer heat was unbearable, but nothing could dampen her excitement today. After 3 years of saving every penny from her job at the local diner, she finally had enough money to buy the engagement ring she had been dreaming about. Her boyfriend James worked double shifts at the construction site, and together they had managed to put aside $2,000 for this special moment. James squeezed her hand gently as they walked down the busy street. He was still wearing his work clothes, having rushed straight from the job site to meet her. His boots were dusty and his jeans had small paint stains from the morning's work, but Maria thought he looked perfect. They had been together for 5 years, living in a small apartment above Mrs. Chen's grocery store, sharing dreams of a better future and a family of their own. The jewelry store gleamed like a palace in the afternoon sun. Golden letters spelled out prestige fine jewelry across the large glass windows, and inside beautiful displays showcased rings that sparkled under bright lights. Maria had walked past this store hundreds of times on her way to work, always stopping to admire the rings in the window. She had picked out the perfect one months ago, a simple but elegant diamond ring that cost exactly what they had managed to save. As they approached the entrance, Maria noticed her reflection in the glass door. Her uniform from the diner was clean but showed signs of wear, and her shoes, though polished, were clearly from the discount store. James looked equally humble in his work clothes. For a moment, doubt crept into her mind, but James noticed her hesitation and smiled warmly. "You ready for this, beautiful?" he whispered, his eyes full of love and determination. Maria nodded, taking a deep breath as they pushed open the heavy glass door. The interior of the store was even more impressive than she had imagined. Soft classical music played in the background, and the air conditioning provided a welcome relief from the heat outside. Display cases lined the walls filled with necklaces, earrings, and rings that seemed to cost more than Maria made in a year. The floors were polished marble, so clean that Maria could see her reflection as she walked. Behind the main counter stood a woman in her 50s, wearing an expensive-looking black dress and perfectly styled hair. Her name tag read Mrs. Wellington, manager. She was helping a well-dressed couple look at a collection of diamond necklaces, speaking to them in warm, friendly tones about the quality of their pieces and the store's excellent reputation. Maria and James waited patiently near the entrance, not wanting to interrupt. Maria clutched her small purse tighter, feeling the envelope with their carefully saved money inside. She had counted it 3 times that morning to make sure every dollar was there. This was the biggest purchase of their lives, and she wanted everything to be perfect. After a few minutes, the well-dressed couple thanked Mrs. Wellington and left with a small shopping bag. Maria's heart raced with excitement as she realized it was finally their turn. She had practiced what she would say, how she would ask to see the ring in the window, how she would explain that they had been saving for months to afford it. Mrs. Wellington looked up from organizing some papers behind the counter. Her eyes swept over Maria and James, taking in their work clothes and humble appearance. Her welcoming smile faded almost immediately, replaced by a look of annoyance and suspicion. She didn't greet them or ask how she could help. Instead, she continued sorting through her paperwork, clearly hoping they would leave on their own. Maria cleared her throat gently and stepped forward with James beside her. "Excuse me," she said politely, her voice filled with nervous excitement. "We'd like to look at one of your engagement rings, please. The one in the front window with the princess-cut diamond." Mrs. Wellington looked up slowly, her expression cold and unwelcoming. She glanced at their clothes again, then at the expensive ring display and back at them. "That ring costs $2,000, she said sharply, as if the price alone should send them away. "It's not something you can put on layaway or pay for in installments." Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she maintained her composure. "We have the money," she said quietly, patting her purse. "We've been saving for months. We'd just like to see it, please." The manager's eyebrows rose skeptically. She looked them up and down once more, clearly doubting that 2 people dressed like Maria and James could possibly afford such an expensive piece of jewelry. "I don't think you understand," she said condescendingly. "This is a high-end jewelry store. Our pieces are investment quality. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the discount jewelry stores in the mall." James stepped forward, his jaw tightening with controlled anger. "We understand perfectly," he said, his voice steady but firm. "We have cash and we'd like to see the ring. Isn't that what jewelry stores are for? Selling jewelry to customers who can pay for it?" Mrs. Wellington's face hardened. She clearly didn't appreciate James's tone, and the fact that they were insisting on being treated like legitimate customers seemed to annoy her further. "Look," she said, making no effort to hide her irritation. "I've been in this business for 20 years. I can tell when people are serious buyers and when they're just window shopping. You're wasting my time, and frankly, you're making my other customers uncomfortable." Maria looked around the store and realized they were the only customers inside. The cruelty of the woman's words hit her like a physical blow. All the excitement and joy she had felt moments earlier drained away, replaced by hurt and humiliation. She had worked so hard for this money, sacrificing small pleasures for months, and now she was being treated like she didn't belong in the store at all. The injustice of the situation began to fuel a different kind of fire inside her. This wasn't just about buying a ring anymore. This was about dignity, respect, and the right to be treated fairly regardless of how much money you had or what clothes you wore. Maria straightened her shoulders and looked Mrs. Wellington directly in the eye, preparing for a confrontation that would change everything. The tension in the jewelry store was thick as Maria stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated by Mrs. Wellington's dismissive attitude. James moved closer to Maria, his protective instincts kicking in as he witnessed the blatant discrimination against the woman he loved. The manager's arrogant assumption that they couldn't afford anything in the store was not just insulting, it was wrong. Maria opened her small purse with deliberate calm and pulled out a white envelope. Her hands were steady despite the anger building inside her. "Mrs. Wellington," she said, her voice clear and controlled. "I work 60 hours a week at Romano's Diner on 5th Street. James works construction, often 12-hour days in this heat. We don't have fancy clothes or expensive cars, but we have something you seem to value most: money." She opened the envelope and began counting out crisp $20 bills on the glass counter. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, she continued, her voice growing stronger with each bill. The sound of paper hitting glass echoed in the quiet store. Other customers might have been intimidated, but Maria was determined to make her point. Mrs. Wellington watched with growing discomfort as the pile of money grew larger. Her confident smirk began to fade as she realized these weren't people pretending to have money they didn't possess. These were hard-working individuals who had earned every dollar they were counting. 500, 600, 700, Maria continued, never breaking eye contact with the manager. "We've been saving for 8 months. No vacations, no fancy dinners, no new clothes. Every extra penny went into this envelope, because we believed that when we had earned enough money, we would be treated with the same respect as any other customer." James watched proudly as Maria stood up for both of them. He had seen her handle difficult customers at the diner with grace and patience, but this was different. This was personal. 1,000, 1,100, 1,200. He joined in, helping her count the remaining bills. By the time they reached $2,000, a small crowd had gathered outside the store window. People walking by had noticed the commotion and stopped to watch through the glass. Some held up their phones, recording what was clearly becoming a confrontation between the humble couple and the jewelry store manager. Mrs. Wellington's face had grown pale as she stared at the neat stack of money on her counter. She realized she had made a serious mistake, but her pride prevented her from backing down immediately. "Well," she said, trying to regain her composure, "even if you have the money, I'm not sure this particular ring is right for you. Perhaps something from our more affordable collection would be better suited." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. Even faced with proof that they could afford the ring, she was still trying to steer them toward cheaper options based solely on their appearance. Maria felt her patience finally snap. "No," Maria said firmly. "We want the ring from the window. The princess cut diamond ring for exactly $2,000. We've done our research, we know what we want, and we have the money to pay for it. The only question is whether you're going to sell it to us or continue to judge us based on our clothes." A well-dressed woman entering the store had overheard the exchange and stopped to listen. She looked shocked by Mrs. Wellington's behavior and whispered something to her companion. Word was spreading quickly about what was happening inside Prestige Fine Jewelry. Mrs. Wellington looked around nervously, suddenly aware that their conversation was attracting attention. She had built her career on maintaining the store's reputation, and she could see that this situation was quickly spiraling out of her control. But instead of apologizing and retrieving the ring, she doubled down on her discriminatory behavior. "I'm sorry, "But I don't think we're going to be able to help you today," she said, her voice cold and final. "This store caters to a particular clientele, and I don't believe our pieces would be appreciated by your type of people." The words hung in the air like poison. James clenched his fists, struggling to maintain his composure. He had faced discrimination before, but never so blatantly. Never when he was simply trying to buy an engagement ring for the woman he loved. Maria stared at Mrs. Wellington in disbelief. She had expected rudeness, maybe some initial skepticism, but this level of open discrimination was shocking. "Our type of people?" she repeated slowly. "You mean working people? People who earn their money through honest work? People who save every penny for months to afford something special?" The crowd outside had grown larger, and several people had their phones pressed against the window, clearly recording everything that was happening inside. Social media notifications were already starting to appear as people shared videos of the confrontation in real time. "I think you need to leave now," Mrs. Wellington said, her voice shaking slightly as she noticed the growing audience, "before this becomes more unpleasant for everyone involved." Maria carefully placed the money back in the envelope, her movements deliberate and dignified. "You're absolutely right," she said quietly. "This has become very unpleasant, but not for the reasons you think." She looked directly at Mrs. Wellington one final time. "We came here as customers ready to make the biggest purchase of our lives in your store. We were excited, happy, and prepared to recommend your business to everyone we knew. Instead, you've shown us exactly what kind of establishment this is and what kind of person you are." James put his arm around Maria's shoulders as they prepared to leave. "You know what's really sad?" he said to Mrs. Wellington. "We would have been the kind of customers who came back. For wedding bands, anniversary gifts, maybe someday for our children. We believe in loyalty and supporting businesses that treat us well. But you'll never know that now." As they walked toward the door, Maria turned back one more time. "I hope the next working-class couple that comes in here gets treated better than we were. But somehow I doubt they will." The couple stepped out into the bright sunshine, where the crowd that had gathered immediately approached them. Several people expressed their outrage at what they had witnessed, and multiple individuals assured them that they had recorded everything and planned to share it online. What Maria and James didn't know was that their story was about to explode across social media, reaching millions of people and setting in motion a series of events that would completely transform their lives and expose the ugly truth about discrimination in ways they never could have imagined. Within hours of leaving prestige fine jewelry, Maria and James found themselves at the center of a social media storm they never could have anticipated. The videos recorded by bystanders outside the jewelry store had been uploaded to multiple platforms, and the story of their humiliating experience was spreading like wildfire across the internet. Sarah Chen, a college student who had witnessed the entire confrontation through the store window, had posted a detailed account on her social media, along with the video she recorded. Her post read, "Just watched the most disgusting display of classism and discrimination at prestige fine jewelry downtown. This beautiful couple saved $2,000 to buy an engagement ring and were treated like criminals just because they were wearing work clothes. This is absolutely unacceptable in 2024. The post had already been shared thousands of times, with comments pouring in from people expressing their outrage and support for Maria and James. Many shared their own stories of similar discrimination, creating a powerful wave of solidarity that transcended social and economic boundaries. Back in their small apartment, Maria sat on their second-hand couch, scrolling through her phone in amazement. James was in the kitchen making dinner, occasionally calling out reactions to the notifications that kept appearing on both their phones. Neither of them had large social media followings, but somehow their story had found its way to people all over the city and beyond. "Maria, look at this," James said, walking over with his phone. "The local news channel wants to interview us. Channel 7 says they're doing a story about discrimination in retail businesses, and they want to hear our side." Maria felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention. All they had wanted was to buy an engagement ring and start planning their future together. Now they were being called heroes by strangers on the internet, and their private humiliation had become a public cause. "I don't know if I'm ready for all this," she admitted, showing James some of the messages she had received. "People are being so supportive, but it's also scary. Some of these comments are getting really angry, and I don't want anyone to get hurt or in trouble because of what happened to us." Her phone buzzed with a new notification. This one was different. A private message from someone named David Martinez, who introduced himself as the owner of Martinez Fine Jewelry, a family-owned store across town. His message was respectful and heartfelt. "I saw what happened to you today, and I want you to know that not all jewelry store owners think or act like that. If you're still looking for an engagement ring, I would be honored to help you find the perfect one. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect." Maria showed the message to James, and they both felt a spark of hope. Maybe their awful experience could lead to something positive after all. They decided to visit Mr. Martinez the next day, curious to see if his promise of respectful treatment was genuine. Meanwhile, the social media storm was growing stronger. A local food blogger with a large following had picked up the story and connected it to broader issues about how service workers are treated in society. Her post highlighted Maria's dedication to her job at the diner and James's hard work in construction, painting them as representatives of hard-working Americans who deserved better treatment. The story caught the attention of Romano, the owner of the diner where Maria worked. He had always appreciated Maria's work ethic and friendly attitude with customers, but he had no idea about her plans to get engaged or the discrimination she had faced. He immediately posted on the diner's social media accounts, praising Maria as one of his best employees and expressing his outrage at how she had been treated. "Maria Rodriguez has been serving our customers with a smile and dedication for 3 years," on his post read. "She represents everything good about hardworking Americans who earn every dollar through honest labor. What happened to her and James today is disgraceful, and I stand behind them completely." The post was shared hundreds of times by the diner's regular customers, many of whom knew Maria personally and were shocked to learn about her experience. Several customers mentioned that they had always received excellent service from Maria and couldn't believe anyone would treat her poorly. By evening, the hashtag #RespectAllCustomers was trending locally, with people sharing their own stories of discrimination and supporting Maria and James. Local business owners began commenting on the posts, many promising to evaluate their own customer service practices and ensure that all customers are treated equally regardless of their appearance or perceived wealth. The story also reached the attention of civil rights organizations, who saw it as an example of the everyday discrimination that working-class people face. They began sharing resources about customer rights and ways to report discriminatory business practices. But perhaps the most significant development came late that night, when Maria received a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was professional but warm, introducing herself as Jennifer Walsh, a producer for a national morning television show. "Ms. Rodriguez," she said, "I've been following your story online, and I think it represents something really important that's happening in our country right now. We'd like to invite you and James to appear on our show to share your experience and talk about the broader issues of discrimination and respect in customer service." Maria's heart raced. A national television show wanted to hear their story. She looked at James, who had been listening to the conversation, his eyes wide with surprise. This was far beyond anything they had imagined when they walked into that jewelry store. "We understand this is a lot to process," Ms. Walsh continued. "You don't have to decide right now, but I want you to know that your story is resonating with people all over the country. You've started an important conversation about how we treat each other, especially people who work hard for their money." After hanging up, Maria and James sat in their small living room, trying to process everything that had happened in just one day. They had gone from being humiliated customers to becoming the faces of a movement they never intended to start. "What do you think?" Maria asked James. "Should we do the interview?" James took her hand, the same way he had outside the jewelry store that morning, though it felt like a lifetime ago. "I think we should tell our story," he said. "Not for revenge or attention, but because maybe it will help other people who go through the same thing. Maybe it will make some business owners think twice before they judge customers based on their clothes." As they prepared for bed, both of them knew that their lives had changed forever. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities they never could have expected. But tonight they fell asleep holding hands, knowing that no matter what came next, they would face it together with the same dignity and strength they had shown in that jewelry store. The next morning, Maria and James woke to find their story had exploded far beyond their local community. What started as a social media post had been picked up by news outlets across the country, with major publications running headlines about discrimination in retail and the power of social media to expose injustice. Their phones were buzzing constantly with interview requests, messages of support, and opportunities they never could have imagined. Before facing the media attention, they decided to visit David Martinez at his jewelry store, as he had offered the previous day. Martinez Fine Jewelry was located in a modest strip mall across town, far different from the gleaming downtown location of Prestige Fine Jewelry. But the moment they walked through the door, they felt the difference in atmosphere. David Martinez himself greeted them at the entrance. He was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years of working with jewelry. "Maria and James," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve you. I've been following your story, and I want you to know that what happened to you does not represent how all jewelers feel about our customers." Unlike their previous experience, Mr. Martinez immediately invited them to sit down, offered them coffee, and began asking about their preferences, their relationship, and what kind of ring would best represent their love for each other. He listened carefully to their story about saving money and explained the different options available within their budget. "Every customer who walks through that door deserves respect," he explained as he showed them several rings. "I don't care if someone comes in wearing a tuxedo or work clothes. Money is money, and more importantly, love is love. You're making one of the most important purchases of your lives, and that should be celebrated, not judged." When Maria saw the ring that captured her heart, a beautiful solitaire diamond that sparkled even more brilliantly than the one from Prestige Fine Jewelry, Mr. Martinez carefully explained its qualities and offered to size it perfectly for her finger. The price was exactly within their budget, and the service was everything they had hoped for the day before. As James placed the ring on Maria's finger for the first time, both of them felt tears of joy. This was the moment they had been saving for, dreaming about, working toward for months. The discrimination they had faced the previous day seemed to fade away as they focused on their love and their future together. "This is perfect," Maria whispered, admiring the ring on her hand. "This is exactly what we wanted." Mr. Martinez smiled broadly, clearly moved by their happiness. "You know what? You've been through enough. I'm going to include the sizing, the cleaning, and a lifetime warranty at no extra charge. It's the least I can do after what you experienced yesterday." Word of their visit to Martinez Fine Jewelry quickly spread online as people continued to follow their story. Mr. Martinez's respectful treatment of Maria and James became another part of the narrative that was capturing national attention. His business received hundreds of positive reviews and messages of support from people who appreciated his inclusive approach to customer service. Meanwhile, the backlash against Prestige Fine Jewelry was intensifying. The store's social media pages were flooded with negative reviews, and several customers had posted videos of themselves canceling orders and returning jewelry they had purchased. The hashtag Boycott Prestige Jewelry was trending, with people sharing the contact information for the store's corporate headquarters and encouraging others to express their displeasure with Mrs. Wellington's behavior. Local news crews had set up outside Prestige Fine Jewelry, trying to get a statement from Mrs. Wellington or the store's management, but the store remained closed, with a small sign in the window stating that they were temporarily closed for staff training. The irony of the situation was not lost on the growing crowd of protesters who had gathered outside. By afternoon, Maria and James found themselves in a professional television studio, preparing for their first major interview. The producer, Jennifer Walsh, had flown in from New York specifically to meet with them and had arranged for the interview to be broadcast live on the national morning show. "Just be yourselves," Ms. Walsh advised them as they sat in the makeup chair. "People are connecting with your story because you're genuine, hardworking people who were treated unfairly. Don't worry about being perfect, just tell your truth." The interview itself was surreal for Maria and James. They found themselves sitting across from a famous television host, sharing their story with millions of viewers across the country. The host was sympathetic and asked thoughtful questions about their experience, the discrimination they faced, and what they hoped would come from the attention their story had received. "What we really want," Maria explained during the interview, "is for this to be a teaching moment. We don't want revenge against Mrs. Wellington or the store. We want people to understand that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance or their job. James nodded in agreement. We work hard for our money just like everyone else. The clothes we wear or the jobs we have don't make us worth less than anyone else. We just want to be judged by our character and our actions, not by our appearance. The interview struck a chord with viewers, many of whom called in or posted online about their own experiences with discrimination. The show's social media accounts were flooded with messages of support, and several other news programs reached out to request follow-up interviews. But the most surprising development came during a commercial break, when the show's producer approached them with an unexpected offer. A major jewelry company that had been watching the interview had contacted the show and wanted to make a gesture of goodwill. Tiffany & Co. has been following your story, the producer explained. They'd like to invite you to visit their flagship store in New York, all expenses paid, to show you how customers should be treated. They want to demonstrate that luxury retailers can and should treat every customer with respect. Maria and James looked at each other in amazement. Just 2 days earlier, they had been turned away from a local jewelry store, and now one of the most famous jewelry companies in the world was inviting them to New York City. The story was becoming bigger than just their personal experience. It was sparking conversations about class, dignity, customer service, and the way society treats working people. Businesses across the country were examining their own practices, and customer service training programs were incorporating their story as an example of what not to do. As they left the television studio, Maria and James realized that their simple desire to buy an engagement ring had somehow turned into something much more significant. They were no longer just a couple planning their future together. They had become symbols of dignity, perseverance, and the power of standing up for what's right. The ring on Maria's finger caught the light as they walked hand in hand toward their car, a beautiful reminder that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most unexpected blessings. 3 days after their television appearance, Maria and James found themselves on a plane to New York City, courtesy of Tiffany & Co. Neither of them had ever flown before, and as they looked out the window at the clouds below, they could hardly believe how dramatically their lives had changed since that terrible encounter at Prestige Fine Jewelry. The Tiffany & Co. flagship store on Fifth Avenue was unlike anything they had ever seen. The iconic blue boxes, the elegant displays, the impeccable service, everything was designed to make customers feel special and valued. From the moment they walked through the famous doors, they were treated like royalty. Rebecca Sterling, a senior manager at Tiffany, personally welcomed them to the store. She was a sophisticated woman in her 40s who immediately put them at ease with her warm smile and genuine interest in their story. "We've been following your experience," she told them as she led them through the store. "What happened to you goes against everything we believe about customer service and human dignity." The contrast with their experience at Prestige Fine Jewelry could not have been more stark. Every employee they met was courteous, professional, and genuinely excited to help them explore the store's magnificent collection. They were offered champagne, shown rare pieces from the archives, and treated to a behind-the-scenes tour of how jewelry is crafted by master artisans. At Tiffany, "We believe that every customer has a story worth celebrating," Rebecca explained as they admired a display of engagement rings. Whether someone is buying their first piece of jewelry or their 100th, whether they've saved for months or years, every love story deserves to be honored with respect and care. The media attention surrounding their visit was enormous. News crews from major networks were stationed outside the store, and the story of the working-class couple being welcomed by one of the world's most prestigious jewelry brands was making headlines internationally. The contrast between their treatment at Tiffany and their rejection at Prestige Fine Jewelry had become a powerful symbol of how businesses should and shouldn't treat their customers. During their visit, Rebecca presented them with a special gift, a pair of matching silver necklaces engraved with the words, "Every love story deserves respect." The gesture brought tears to Maria's eyes, not because of the monetary value, but because of what it represented. Acknowledgement that their experience mattered and that their dignity as customers should never have been questioned. While Maria and James were in New York, the situation back home was escalating rapidly. Prestige Fine Jewelry had remained closed since the story broke, and Mrs. Wellington had not made any public statements. However, investigative reporters had begun digging deeper into the store's practices, and what they discovered was troubling. Several former employees came forward with stories of Mrs. Wellington instructing staff to profile customers based on their appearance and to discourage certain types of people from browsing expensive items. One former sales associate revealed that there had been an unofficial policy of showing cheaper items to customers who didn't look wealthy, regardless of their actual purchasing power. She would tell us to judge customers the moment they walked in, explained Jennifer Park, who had worked at the store for 2 years before quitting in frustration. If someone came in wearing work clothes or looked like they might not have much money, we were supposed to steer them toward the clearance section or suggest they might be more comfortable shopping somewhere else. These revelations added another layer to the story, showing that Maria and James's experience was not an isolated incident, but part of a systematic pattern of discrimination. Civil rights organizations announced they were considering filing formal complaints against the store, and the state attorney general's office indicated they were reviewing the matter. The corporate headquarters of Prestige Fine Jewelry finally broke their silence with a carefully worded press release. They announced that Mrs. Wellington had been relieved of her duties and that the company was conducting a comprehensive review of their customer service policies. They also stated that they were implementing mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees. However, many people felt the response was too little, too late. The damage to the company's reputation was severe, with several locations reporting significant drops in foot traffic and sales. The stock price of the parent company had fallen considerably, and there were rumors that several franchise locations were considering changing their brand affiliation. Back in New York, Maria and James were overwhelmed by the continued support they were receiving from around the world. Their social media accounts were flooded with messages from people sharing their own stories of discrimination and thanking them for speaking out. Many working-class individuals expressed gratitude that someone had finally stood up to the kind of treatment they had experienced, but had been too intimidated or discouraged to address publicly. The mayor of their hometown called them personally to express his support and to invite them to a city council meeting where they would be recognized for bringing attention to important issues of equality and respect. Local businesses were reaching out to offer them jobs, services, and opportunities, impressed by their grace under pressure and their dignity in the face of discrimination. Perhaps most surprisingly, they began receiving wedding gift donations from strangers around the world. People were sending money, offering services for their wedding, and expressing their desire to help make their special day memorable after the terrible treatment they had received. A wedding planner from Los Angeles offered to organize their entire wedding free of charge, and a photographer from Chicago volunteered to capture their special day. "I can't believe how this has all turned out," Maria said to James as they walked through Central Park during their New York visit. "A week ago, we were just a couple trying to buy an engagement ring. Now people all over the world know our story, and we're being treated like celebrities." James squeezed her hand, looking down at the engagement ring from Mr. Martinez that she wore proudly. "Maybe this all happened for a reason," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe we were supposed to go through that experience so that other people wouldn't have to face the same thing alone." As they prepared to return home, Maria and James knew that their lives had been permanently changed by their experience. They had become advocates for dignity and respect, symbols of the power of standing up to discrimination, and representatives of working people everywhere who deserve to be treated fairly regardless of their appearance or economic status. The engagement ring that had started this entire journey sparkled on Maria's finger as they boarded their plane home, but now it represented so much more than their love for each other. It had become a symbol of justice, equality, and the idea that every person's dreams and aspirations deserve respect and support. 6 months after their discriminatory encounter at Prestige Fine Jewelry, Maria and James stood hand in hand in the beautiful garden behind the community center, surrounded by 300 wedding guests from around the world. Their simple desire to buy an engagement ring had blossomed into a love story that captured hearts internationally, and their wedding had become a celebration of dignity, respect, and the power of standing up for what's right. The wedding was unlike anything either of them could have ever imagined. The professional wedding planner from Los Angeles had created a magical ceremony that honored their humble backgrounds while celebrating their journey to national recognition. Local flowers filled the space, donated by florists who had been moved by their story, and the catering was provided by small businesses from their neighborhood who wanted to be part of their special day. David Martinez, the jeweler who had treated them with such kindness, served as one of the groomsmen, and Rebecca Sterling from Tiffany & Co. had flown in from New York to attend the ceremony. The guest list included co-workers from the diner and construction site, family members, local community leaders, and dozens of people who had been inspired by their story and had traveled from across the country to witness their marriage. Romano, Maria's boss from the diner, gave an emotional speech during the reception about Maria's character and work ethic. "I've watched Maria serve thousands of customers over the past 3 years," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "She treats everyone with the same kindness and respect, whether they're ordering a cup of coffee or a full meal. She represents everything good about working people in America, and I'm honored to call her family." The transformation in their lives had been remarkable, but Maria and James had remained grounded and true to their values throughout their unexpected journey to fame. They had used their platform to advocate for worker rights and dignity, speaking at conferences and events about the importance of treating all customers fairly regardless of their appearance or perceived social status. Their story had sparked real change in the retail industry. Major companies had revised their customer service training programs, incorporating lessons about unconscious bias and the importance of treating every customer with respect. Several states had introduced legislation protecting customers from discrimination based on appearance, and the Maria and James Act was being considered at the federal level. Prestige fine jewelry had never recovered from the scandal. The chain had closed 17 locations nationwide, and the parent company had filed for bankruptcy protection. Mrs. Wellington had disappeared from public view entirely, and the downtown location where their ordeal began had been converted into a community center that provided job training and financial literacy courses for working-class families. The positive changes extended far beyond the jewelry industry. Their story had become a case study in business schools about the importance of inclusive customer service, and many companies had adopted policies specifically designed to prevent the kind of discrimination Maria and James had experienced. During their wedding ceremony, James's voice was strong and clear as he recited his personally written vows. "Maria, when we walked into that jewelry store 6 months ago, I thought we were just buying a ring. But you showed me something much more valuable that day. You showed me the power of dignity, the strength of character, and the importance of standing up for what's right. You didn't just become my fiancé that day. You became my hero." Maria's vows were equally heartfelt, speaking not just to James, but to the journey they had shared and the lessons they had learned together. "James, our love story isn't just about us anymore. It's about every working person who has ever been made to feel less than worthy, every customer who has been judged unfairly, and everyone who has ever had to fight for basic respect and dignity. We've learned that love isn't just about the two people in a relationship. It's about how we treat each other as human beings." As the evening progressed, the couple was surprised by a special video message that played during the reception. It was from families around the world who had been inspired by their story to stand up against discrimination in their own lives. Teachers, construction workers, retail employees, restaurant staff, and people from dozens of professions shared how Maria and James's courage had given them the strength to demand better treatment and respect. The most touching moment of the evening came when Sarah Chen, the college student who had first posted their story on social media, approached them during the reception. She had tears in her eyes as she spoke to them privately. "I just want you to know," she said, "that watching you two that day changed my life. I realized that I had the power to stand up against injustice even in small ways. I've been volunteering with civil rights organizations ever since, and I'm changing my major to social justice. You showed me that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences in the world." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Maria and James found themselves alone in their beautifully decorated venue, surrounded by gifts, flowers, and cards from well-wishers around the globe. They sat together on a bench in the garden, Maria's wedding dress spread around them, both of them trying to process the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mrs. Wellington had just treated us nicely that day?" Maria asked, leaning against James's shoulder. James considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. We would have bought our ring, gotten married quietly, and probably lived our whole lives without anyone knowing our names. But then I think about all the people who have reached out to us, all the changes that have happened because of what we went through, and I realize that maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Maria looked down at her engagement ring, the same ring from Mr. Martinez's store that had started their incredible journey. It sparkled in the moonlight, but now it represented so much more than their personal love story. It had become a symbol of justice, dignity, and the idea that every person deserves respect regardless of their circumstances. As they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, another gift from supporters who wanted to celebrate their love story. Maria and James knew that their lives would never be ordinary again. They had become advocates, symbols, and representatives of working people everywhere who simply wanted to be treated with dignity and respect. Their simple desire to buy an engagement ring had indeed shocked everyone, but not in the way Mrs. Wellington had intended. Instead of shocking people with their perceived inability to afford jewelry, they had shocked the world with their grace, dignity, and unwavering commitment to justice. They had proven that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with the quietest acts of standing up for what's right. The fairy tale that began with discrimination and humiliation had transformed into a love story that inspired millions, a reminder that every person's dreams matter and every customer deserves respect, regardless of the clothes they wear or the work they do.